My wife's idea of helping her sick mother involves more designer makeup than medical supplies. Funny how that works. "I'll be back tomorrow night, honey," Kara said, adjusting her perfectly applied lipstick in our hallway mirror. She wore that little black dress, the one that cost more than my monthly truck payment. Real appropriate for a sickbed visit. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "Your mom feeling worse?" I asked, watching her check her phone for the third time in 5 minutes. "Oh, you know how she gets. Dramatic about everything." Kara's laugh sounded forced, like she was reading from a script she'd barely memorized. "She just needs someone to fuss over her." I nodded, sipping my coffee. 20 years in the landscaping business teaches you to read the signs. Faded grass doesn't lie about needing water, and my wife wasn't lying about where she was going. She was lying about why. "Drive safe," I said, kissing her cheek. She smelled like expensive perfume and secrets. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Through the window, I watched her load an overnight bag into her BMW, the one I'd helped her buy last year when business was good. She backed out of our driveway without looking back. I finished my coffee and called Tommy Pierce, my business partner of 15 years. "Weston Landscaping," Tommy's gravelly voice answered. "It's me. Can you handle the Morrison job alone today?" Something came up. "Sure thing, boss. Everything okay? Just need to check on something. I'll catch up with you later." Tommy knew better than to push. That's why we worked well together. He handled the crews, I handled the business side, and neither of us asked too many questions when the other needed space. I grabbed my keys and headed for my pickup truck. Kara's mother lived 40 minutes north, but I had a feeling my wife wasn't making that drive today. The Riverside Inn sat on the edge of downtown, a 3-story brick building that had seen better decades. It wasn't sleazy exactly, just tired, the kind of place traveling salesmen used when their expense accounts ran thin. I parked across the street and waited. Kara's BMW sat in the hotel parking lot like a guilty confession. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. 23 years of marriage, and it comes to this, sitting in a truck, watching my wife cheat on me in broad daylight. Part of me wanted to storm into that hotel and drag her out by her perfectly styled hair. The smarter part knew that patience would serve me better. I waited 2 hours. Long enough to plan exactly how I'd make them both pay. At 11:30, the hotel's side door opened. A young man stepped out, running his hand through his dark hair and looking around the parking lot like he was checking for witnesses. My son Jake, 26 years old, personal trainer at the local gym, and apparently sleeping with his stepmother. The woman I'd married when he was just 16. The woman who'd played the caring stepmother while secretly planning to destroy everything I'd built. Jake walked to his red Mustang, the one I'd helped him finance 2 years ago, and drove away without noticing my truck. Kid always was too self-absorbed to pay attention to his surroundings. I sat there for another hour, letting the rage settle into something colder and more useful. Anger makes you stupid. Calculation makes you dangerous. When Kara finally emerged at 1 o'clock, she looked exactly like someone who'd spent the morning in bed with a man half her age, satisfied, glowing, completely unaware that her husband had just watched her world begin to crumble. I followed her home, staying 3 cars back. She pulled into our driveway and walked into the house like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just shattered 23 years of trust in a hotel room that probably smelled like disinfectant and broken promises. "How's your mother?" I asked when she found me in the kitchen. "Oh, much better. She just needed some company." Kara opened the refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of water. "You know how lonely she gets." "That's good to hear. I was worried about her." "You're so sweet to care." She kissed my cheek again, and I caught that same expensive perfume mixed with something else. Cologne I didn't recognize, but had a feeling I'd smell again soon. "I'm going to work in the shop for a while," I said. "Got some equipment to organize." "Okay, honey. I'll start dinner around 6. I walked out to my workshop behind the house, closed the door, and pulled out a yellow legal pad. At the top of the first page, I wrote, War Journal, Day 1. Below that, I started making lists, bank accounts, business assets, property deeds, insurance policies. Everything Kara thought she had a claim to, and everything I was about to take away from her. They thought they were so clever, sneaking around behind my back. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I'd built a successful landscaping company from nothing, survived a bitter divorce from Jake's mother, weathered 3 recessions and 2 major equipment thefts. I knew how to plan, how to be patient, and how to strike when my enemies least expected it. Kara and Jake were about to learn what happens when you betray a man who makes his living pulling weeds out by the roots. The next morning, I drove to the Riverside Inn at 7 o'clock sharp. Mrs. Blevins, the hotel manager, was watering the sad-looking flowers by the front entrance, petunias that were clearly fading from overwatering and poor drainage. "Morning, Eli," she called out. "You hear about the landscaping contract?" "Actually, I wanted to ask you about something else." I pulled out my wallet and extracted 5 $20 bills. My wife might be having some troubles, and I need to know if she's been staying here recently. Mrs. Blevins looked at the money, then at me. She was 60-something, divorced twice, and had the sharp eyes of someone who'd seen every kind of human drama play out in her lobby. "What kind of troubles?" "The kind that involve young men and afternoon visits." "Ah." She pocketed the bills smoothly. "Room 237, been renting it twice a week for the past month. Always pays cash, always brings the same dark-haired boy with her. Good-looking kid, drives a red sports car. I don't suppose you have security cameras." "Honey, this place has cameras everywhere. Insurance company requires it." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "For another 100, I might be able to find some footage that accidentally got copied to a thumb drive. I'll be back this afternoon." I drove to the bank and cleaned out the joint savings account. Perfectly legal since both our names were on it. Kara had been slowly draining money from our business account for months, thinking I wouldn't notice. Time to cut off that particular stream. Next stop, my lawyer's office. David Chen had handled my first divorce and the business incorporation. He was expensive, but he was also ruthless when he needed to be. "Eli, good to see you. What brings you in?" "I need to discuss asset protection. My wife has been having an affair with my son, and I want to make sure they can't take anything that belongs to me when this goes public." David didn't even blink. 20 years of family law had probably shown him worse. "Tell me everything." I laid out the facts, the hotel visits, the missing money, the lies about her mother. David took notes and asked pointed questions about our prenuptial agreement, which Kara had refused to sign, and our business structure. "The good news is that the landscaping company is solely in your name," he said. "The house is joint property, but we can work with that. How much evidence do you have?" "Getting more today. Photos, financial records, witness statements." "Good. Document everything, but don't confront them yet. Let them think they're getting away with it while we build our case." "What about Jake? Can I fire him from the company?" "He's your employee, not a partner. You can terminate him for any reason as long as it's not discriminatory. Sleeping with his stepmother definitely qualifies as grounds for dismissal." I left David's office feeling better than I had in weeks. Having a plan always calmed me down. It's why I'd been successful in business while other contractors went bankrupt. You identify the problem, gather your resources, and execute the solution. That afternoon, I picked up the thumb drive from Mrs. Blevins. The footage was crystal clear. Kara and Jake entering the hotel together, leaving together, acting like a couple instead of family members. The timestamps showed they'd been meeting every Tuesday and Friday for over a month. I made copies of everything and stored the originals in my safe deposit box. Then I drove to Murphy's Bar, the local watering hole where half the town gathered after work to drink beer and share gossip. "Eli!" called out Mike Torino, a plumber who'd been using my services for years. Haven't seen you in here for a while. How's business? Can't complain, though I've been having some family issues lately. Sorry to hear that. Nothing serious, I hope. My wife's been spending a lot of time helping her sick mother. Very dedicated daughter. I took a sip of beer and shook my head sadly, though I have to admit, I'm starting to wonder if there's something else going on. What do you mean? Well, she's been staying overnight at hotels instead of her mother's house. Says it's more convenient, but I shrugged. Maybe I'm just being paranoid. Hotels? Which one? The Riverside Inn. I only know because I saw her car there when I was driving past. Mike's expression shifted. Huh. That's interesting. Why? My cousin works at the gym downtown. He mentioned seeing Jake's car at that same hotel a few times recently. Thought it was weird because Jake lives in an apartment across town. I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. The gossip network in a small town works faster than social media, and it's twice as destructive. By tomorrow, half the town would be wondering why Kara and Jake were both spending time at the same hotel. I'm sure it's nothing, I said, finishing my beer. Just coincidence. But I could see the wheels turning in Mike's head. Small towns thrive on speculation, and I'd just given him the juiciest piece of gossip he'd heard all month. I drove home to find Kara in the kitchen, humming while she prepared dinner. She looked relaxed, happy, the way guilty people look when they think they're getting away with something. How was your day, honey? She asked, kissing my cheek. Productive. Made some important decisions about the business. Oh? Like what? Just restructuring some things, cutting out the extra weight, focusing on what's profitable. That sounds smart. You've always been so good at business. If she only knew how good I was about to become. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Dad, can we talk tomorrow? There's something I need to tell you. I showed the message to Kara. Any idea what this is about? Her face went pale for just a moment before she recovered. No idea. You know how dramatic he can be. Yeah, he gets that from his mother. I texted back, sure, come by the office around noon. Tomorrow, the real fun would begin. Jake showed up at my office 15 minutes late, wearing gym clothes and looking like he hadn't slept. His hands were shaking slightly, either from caffeine or guilt. Dad, thanks for meeting with me. No problem. What's on your mind? He sat down across from my desk, running his hands through his hair. This is really hard to say. Take your time. I've made a huge mistake. Something that's going to hurt you, and I don't know how to fix it. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my expression neutral. What kind of mistake? It's about Kara. What about her? Jake looked like he was about to throw up. We've been seeing each other for about 2 months now. I know it's wrong. I know it's messed up, but it just happened, and now I don't know how to stop it. I let the silence stretch for a long moment, watching him squirm. You've been sleeping with my wife. Yes. My wife, who's been married to me for 23 years. Yes. The woman who helped raise you when you were a teenager. Dad, please. How long? I told you. About 2 months. Where? What? Where have you been meeting? Her mother's house? Jake's face crumpled. The Riverside Inn. We rented a room. With whose money? What do you mean? Who's been paying for these hotel rooms, Jake? You work part-time at a gym? Kara doesn't have a job? She said she had savings. She's been stealing from my business account. Did you know that? Jake went white. No, I swear I didn't know. She never told me where the money came from. I pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. Bank statements. She's taken $43,000 over the past 6 months. Money that was supposed to go toward new equipment and employee bonuses. Jake opened the folder with trembling hands. Oh God. Dad, I had no idea. But you knew she was married to me? Yes. And you knew it was wrong? Yes. But you did it anyway. Jake's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. I stood up and walked around the desk. Jake flinched like he thought I was going to hit him, but I just leaned against the edge and crossed my arms. You're fired. Dad, you're fired from the company, effective immediately. You'll return all equipment, uniforms, and company property by 5 o'clock today. Tommy will escort you to collect your personal items. Please, can we talk about this? We just did. You confessed to having an affair with my wife and helping her steal from my business. What exactly is there to discuss? Jake started crying, actual tears running down his face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. How did it start? What? The affair. How did it begin? Jake wiped his eyes with his sleeve. She came to the gym about 3 months ago, said she wanted to get in shape, surprise you for your anniversary. We started training together and she was so attentive. She made me feel important. And then? She started texting me outside of training sessions, asking for advice, talking about her problems. She said you two weren't happy anymore, that you barely talked to each other. That's not true. I know that now, but at the time, I believed her. She made it seem like she was lonely, like you didn't appreciate her. So you decided to fix that by sleeping with her. It wasn't like that. She kissed me first, after a training session. Said she couldn't help herself, that there was something special between us. I felt sick listening to this, not because of the betrayal, I'd already processed that anger, but because of how easily they'd both been willing to destroy our family for something so cheap and temporary. Pack your things and get out, I said. If I see you anywhere near Kara, anywhere near my house, or anywhere near this business, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. Dad, please, can't we work through this somehow? No. Jake stood up slowly, like an old man. What are you going to do about Kara? That's not your concern anymore. After he left, I called Tommy and explained the situation. Tommy had worked with me long enough to know that when I made a decision, I'd already thought it through completely. Want me to change the locks on the equipment shed? He asked. Good idea. And remove Jake from the insurance policy. He's no longer authorized to drive company vehicles. Consider it done. Anything else? Spread the word that we're hiring. We'll need a new part-time helper. What should I tell people about why Jake's gone? Tell them he violated company policy. Anyone who wants details can ask me directly. That evening, I cooked dinner for Kara and me, something I rarely did, but tonight felt like a special occasion. She seemed nervous, checking her phone constantly and jumping every time it buzzed. Everything okay? I asked. Fine, just tired. How's your mother doing? Better, much better. Good. I was thinking we should visit her this weekend. It's been too long since I've seen her. Kara nearly choked on her wine. Oh, that's sweet. But she's still recovering. The doctor said no visitors except immediate family. I'm family. You know what I mean. Direct family. Right. After dinner, Kara excused herself to take a bath. I heard her talking quietly on the phone behind the locked bathroom door, probably trying to reach Jake, who wasn't answering because I'd made it clear that any further contact would result in legal action. I sat in my study and updated my war journal. Phase 1 was complete. Jake was out of the business and out of our lives. Phase 2 would be more complicated, but also more satisfying. Kara emerged from the bathroom an hour later, wearing a silk nightgown and a forced smile. Honey, can we talk? Of course. She sat on the edge of our bed, twisting her wedding ring around her finger. I think we should discuss our future. What about it? Well, we've been married a long time and maybe we've grown apart. Maybe we want different things now. Such as? I don't know. Freedom to explore other relationships, maybe? I almost laughed. She was actually going to try to negotiate an open marriage after stealing from me and sleeping with my son. Are you asking for a divorce, Kara? Not exactly. More like space to figure things out. I see. And during this space, you'd be free to see other people? If that's what we both wanted. Interesting timing for this conversation. What do you mean? Nothing. I'm just surprised you're bringing this up now, out of nowhere. Kara looked relieved. So you'll think about it? Oh, I'll definitely think about it. She kissed my cheek and settled into bed beside me. Within minutes, she was asleep, probably exhausted from the stress of trying to manage 2 relationships and a guilty conscience. I lay awake for hours, planning phase 2. The next morning, I arrived at the office early to find Jake's company uniform, tools, and keys in a box by the front door. At least he'd followed through on returning the equipment, even if he'd been too ashamed to face me again. Tommy showed up with coffee and donuts from the bakery downtown. Heard some interesting gossip this morning, he said. Oh? Mike Torino was telling everyone at the bakery about some drama at the Riverside Inn. Apparently your wife and Jake have been spotted there together multiple times. People sure do love to talk. They do indeed. Mike seemed to think it was mighty suspicious, 2 family members needing hotel rooms when they both live in town. What did you tell him? Nothing. Figured you'd want to handle your own family business. I appreciate that. Tommy bit into a donut and studied my face. You doing okay, boss? This has got to be rough. I'm managing. What's the plan? The plan is to let them dig their own graves while I document everything for the divorce attorney. Smart, clean, and legal. Exactly. Around 10 o'clock, my phone rang. Kara's name appeared on the screen. Hi, honey. I'm going to help my mother with some errands today. I'll be back this evening. Drive safe. Love you. Love you too. I hung up and immediately called Mrs. Blevins at the hotel. Riverside Inn. Mrs. Blevins, this is Eli Weston. Has my wife checked in today? Not yet, but she called to reserve her usual room for this afternoon. Thank you. I drove to Jake's apartment complex and parked where I could see his red Mustang. At 11:30, he came out wearing jeans and a nervous expression. He drove straight to the Riverside Inn. Kara arrived 20 minutes later. I waited until they were both inside, then made a phone call to my friend Detective Morrison at the police department. Ruth, this is Eli Weston. I need to report some suspicious financial activity involving my business accounts. What kind of activity? Unauthorized withdrawals. Large amounts of cash taken without my knowledge or approval. How much are we talking about? $43,000 over 6 months. That's definitely felony territory. Do you know who has access to the accounts? My wife is listed as an authorized user, but she's been taking money without discussing it with me. I just discovered the extent of it yesterday. Can you come in this afternoon to file a formal complaint? I'll be there at 2 o'clock. After filing the police report, I drove to Murphy's Bar. The lunch crowd was smaller than the evening group, but it included several of the town's most reliable gossips. Eli, called out Sarah Martinez, who worked at the post office and knew everyone's business. How are you holding up? Holding up? With all the drama, Mike told us about the hotel situation with Kara and Jake. I sat down at the bar and ordered a beer. I'm not sure what you mean. Oh, honey, the whole town's talking about it. Kara's car and Jake's car at the same hotel, multiple times. People are starting to put 2 and 2 together. And what are they coming up with? Well, nobody wants to say it directly, but... Sarah lowered her voice. Is your wife having an affair with your son? I took a long sip of beer before answering. I honestly don't know what to think anymore. Oh, you poor thing. This must be devastating. It's been a difficult few days. Have you confronted them about it? I fired Jake from the company yesterday. He admitted they've been seeing each other. The bar went silent. Even the bartender stopped washing glasses. He admitted it? Sarah's eyes were wide with shock. Said it's been going on for 2 months. They've been meeting at the Riverside Inn twice a week. With whose money? Apparently, Kara's been taking cash from our business account without telling me. I just filed a police report about it this afternoon. Oh my God, Eli. I'm so sorry. The worst part is that Jake seemed to think this was some kind of love story, like they couldn't help themselves. That's disgusting. He's young enough to be her son. Technically, he is her stepson. The conversation continued for another hour, with me playing the role of the devastated husband who was just trying to make sense of his collapsing world. By the time I left, everyone in the bar knew the complete story, and they'd be sharing it with their friends and families before dinner. That evening, Kara came home looking flustered and upset. "How was your mother?" I asked. "Fine. She's fine." "You look stressed." "It's nothing. Just a long day." "Jake called me earlier." Kara froze. "What did he want?" "To apologize. Apparently, you two have been having some kind of relationship." "Eli, I can explain. He told me everything. The hotel rooms, the money you've been taking from the business, all of it." Kara sat down heavily in the nearest chair. "I never meant for it to happen." "But it did happen." "Yes." "For 2 months." "Yes." "Using money stolen from our business." "I was going to pay it back." "With what? You don't have a job." "I was going to get a job." "When?" "Soon." I pulled out the bank statements and police report, setting them on the coffee table between us. "I filed charges this afternoon. Grand theft, fraud, and embezzlement." "You called the police on me?" "I called the police on someone who stole $43,000 from my business. The fact that it happens to be my wife doesn't make it legal." Kara started crying, not the gentle tears she'd used to manipulate Jake, but ugly, desperate sobs. "Please don't do this. I'll do anything to fix it." "There's nothing to fix. You made your choices. It meant nothing. Jake means nothing to me." "Then why did you risk everything for nothing?" "I don't know. I was bored. I felt old. I wanted to feel desired again." "So you decided to destroy our marriage and traumatize my son." "He's not a child, Eli. He's a grown man who made his own decisions. He's a 26-year-old kid who got manipulated by a woman with 20 years more experience." "That's not how it was." "That's exactly how it was. You targeted him because you knew he'd be easy to control." Kara wiped her eyes and looked at me with something approaching her old confidence. "What do you want? Money? I'll get the money back somehow. I want you out of my house. This is my house too." "Not anymore. Check the deed." I handed her a document from my lawyer's office. During our marriage, the house had been joint property, but Kara's theft had given me grounds to file for an emergency asset freeze. The judge had granted it that afternoon. "You can't do this." "I already did. You have until Sunday to collect your personal belongings. Anything left behind becomes property of the estate." "Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem anymore." Kara stood up, her tears replaced by anger. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won?" "I think I've protected myself from further damage." "Jake will never forgive you for this." "Jake made his choice when he decided to sleep with you. He'll have to live with the consequences." "And what about us? 23 years of marriage and you're just throwing it away?" "I'm not throwing anything away. You already threw it away when you decided our marriage was worth less than a hotel room and a boy young enough to be your son." Kara grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." After she left, I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my study, updating the war journal. Phase 2 was complete. Kara was out of the house, the police were investigating the theft, and the entire town knew what they'd done. Phase 3 would be the final cleanup, making sure they both understood that actions have consequences, and that betraying family comes with a price that lasts forever. Over the next 3 days, I watched my carefully laid plans unfold with the precision of a military operation. The gossip network had done its work. Everywhere Kara and Jake went, they encountered cold stares and whispered conversations that stopped when they approached. Jake lost 2 personal training clients when their wives decided they didn't want their husbands working with someone who'd sleep with his own stepmother. The gym manager called me Thursday morning to ask if the rumors were true. I can't comment on an ongoing police investigation, I told him, but Jake is no longer employed by my company due to violations of our ethics policy. I see. Thank you for being honest with me. Friday afternoon, I was working in my shop when Tommy came in with a grim expression. We've got a problem, boss. What kind of problem? Jake and Kara were just here, together, demanding to speak with you. What did you tell them? That you were busy and they needed to make an appointment, but they're not leaving. They're sitting in Jake's car in the parking lot waiting. I looked out the window. Jake's red Mustang was parked near the street, and I could see 2 figures inside having what appeared to be an intense conversation. How long have they been there? About 20 minutes. Jake looks like he's been crying, and Kara looks mad enough to bite through steel. Call Detective Morrison. Tell her I'm concerned about potential harassment or trespassing. You got it. While Tommy made the call, I watched Jake and Kara through the window. They were clearly arguing about something, probably about whose fault it was that their perfect little affair had blown up in their faces. Detective Morrison arrived 15 minutes later, parking her patrol car directly behind Jake's Mustang. She was a tall woman in her 40s with graying hair and the no-nonsense attitude of someone who'd dealt with every kind of human stupidity the world had to offer. I walked outside to meet her. Afternoon, Eli. Tommy said you were having some visitor problems. My son and my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, have been sitting in my parking lot for almost an hour. Given the circumstances of our current legal situation, I'm concerned about their intentions. What circumstances? Kara is facing theft charges, and I've had to fire Jake from the company. They've both made threats about this situation not being over. Detective Morrison walked over to Jake's car and tapped on the driver's window. Jake rolled it down, his face red and blotchy from crying. Afternoon, folks. I'm going to need you to move along. We just want to talk to my father, Jake said. Your father has made it clear he doesn't want to speak with you. This is private property, and you're trespassing. This is family business, Kara said from the passenger seat. Ma'am, family business doesn't give you the right to harass someone on their own property. You need to leave now, or I'll have to arrest you both for trespassing. Jake started the car without another word. As they drove away, Kara turned to stare at me through the rear window, her face twisted with rage. Think that'll be the end of it? Detective Morrison asked. Probably not, but at least now there's a record of them coming here against my wishes. Smart thinking. How are you holding up with all this? Better than I expected. Turns out that planning for the worst-case scenario makes you pretty resilient when it actually happens. Any advice for other folks going through similar situations? Document everything, trust your instincts, and don't let emotions make your decisions for you. Detective Morrison smiled. Sounds like you missed your calling as a cop. I'll stick to landscaping, less dangerous. That evening, I was having dinner at Murphy's bar when Sarah Martinez approached my table. Eli, I hope you don't mind me asking, but how are you doing with everything? Taking it one day at a time. The whole town's talking about what happened. Most people think you're handling it with a lot more class than they would. I'm just trying to protect what I've worked for. Well, for what it's worth, nobody blames you for what you had to do. Jake and Kara made their choices. They did. I heard Kara's been staying at her friend Shannon's house since you kicked her out. I wouldn't know. Shannon's not too happy about it, from what I hear. Apparently Kara's been crying and carrying on about how unfair everything is, how you're being vindictive. People see things differently when they're desperate. Jake's been telling people that you're trying to destroy his life out of jealousy. What do you think about that? I think a man who sleeps with his father's wife doesn't get to complain when there are consequences. Saturday morning, I was loading mulch at the garden center when I spotted Jake's Mustang in the parking lot. He was sitting behind the wheel, watching me work. When our eyes met, he got out of the car and walked over. "Dad, please, can we just talk for 5 minutes?" "There's nothing to talk about. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But I'm your son. That has to count for something. You stopped being my son when you decided to sleep with my wife. That's not fair." "Fair?" I set down the bag of mulch and faced him directly. "You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about fair." "Okay. Is it fair that I worked 60-hour weeks for 20 years to build a business that could support our family?" "No, I mean yes, you worked hard. Is it fair that I paid for your car, your apartment deposit, and your gym membership while you figured out what you wanted to do with your life?" "Dad, is it fair that I welcomed Kara into our family when you were 16, treated her like a partner, trusted her with our finances and our future? Please, is it fair that you both decided to throw all of that away for hotel closeness twice a week?" Jake's face crumpled. "We never meant to hurt you." "But you did hurt me. You both did. And now you want me to pretend it doesn't matter because we're family? I want you to forgive me." "Forgiveness is earned, Jake. What have you done to earn it?" "I ended things with Kara. I told her it was over." "When?" "Yesterday. After we came to your office. I realized how crazy this whole thing had become." "So you ended it because you got caught, not because it was wrong." "I ended it because I don't want to lose you forever." I looked at my son, really looked at him. He was 26 years old, but standing there in the garden center parking lot, he looked like a lost teenager who'd finally realized that actions have consequences. "You should have thought about that 2 months ago." "I know. I was stupid and selfish, and I hurt everyone who cared about me, but I'm trying to make it right." "How?" "I got a job at the gym in the next town over. I'm going to pay back every penny that Kara took from the business." "That's $43,000, Jake. On a trainer's salary, that'll take you years." "Then it'll take years, I don't care." "And what about Kara? What about her? Are you going to testify against her when the theft case goes to trial?" Jake hesitated. "If you need me to." "I do need you to. She committed a crime, and you're a witness to it." "Okay, I'll testify." "And you'll stay away from her completely. No contact, no meetings, no attempts to help her or support her." "Yes." "And you'll accept that our relationship may never be the same. You broke something, Jake, and it might not be fixable." "I understand." I studied his face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. All I saw was a young man who'd made a catastrophic mistake and was finally beginning to understand the full scope of the damage. "I'll think about it. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Thinking about it doesn't mean forgiving you." "I know." Jake walked back to his car and drove away. I finished loading the mulch and headed home, wondering if I'd just made the right decision or if I was setting myself up for more disappointment. The trial took place on a gray Tuesday morning in October, 3 months after I'd first followed Kara to the Riverside Inn. The courthouse was nearly empty. Theft cases don't usually draw crowds, but I noticed several familiar faces from Murphy's Bar in the gallery. Kara sat at the defendant's table wearing a conservative blue dress and an expression of wounded dignity. Her lawyer was a young public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. Unauthorized withdrawals, forged signatures, financial records that showed a clear pattern of theft over 6 months. The evidence was overwhelming. Jake testified for 45 minutes, detailing how Kara had convinced him that the money was hers to spend, how she'd paid for their hotel rooms and expensive dinners without ever explaining where the cash came from. His voice was steady but quiet, and he never looked in Kara's direction. When it was my turn to testify, I kept my answers short and factual. Yes, Kara had access to the business account as my wife. No, She did not have permission to withdraw money for personal use. Yes, I had discovered the affair and the theft on the same day. Kara's lawyer tried to paint her as a confused woman going through a midlife crisis, someone who'd made poor decisions but didn't deserve criminal prosecution. He argued that the money was marital property and that the charges were motivated by revenge rather than justice. The prosecutor's rebuttal was simple. Marital property doesn't include business assets, and adultery doesn't justify theft. The jury deliberated for 2 hours and found Kara guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in prison, suspended to 6 months with 3 years probation, and ordered her to pay full restitution plus court costs. As we left the courthouse, Kara's friend Shannon approached me in the parking lot. "I hope you're satisfied," she said. "I'm satisfied that justice was served. You destroyed her life over money. I protected my business from someone who was stealing from it. The fact that it happened to be my wife doesn't change the law. She made a mistake. She made dozens of mistakes over 6 months, involving thousands of dollars. That's not a mistake. It's a crime." Shannon stormed off without another word. That evening, Jake came to my house. It was the first time he'd been inside since the day I'd fired him. "How do you feel about the verdict?" he asked. "I feel like the system worked the way it's supposed to." "And how do you feel about me?" I'd been thinking about that question for months. "I feel like you're my son, and you made a terrible decision that hurt our family. But I also feel like you've been trying to make amends. Does that mean you forgive me?" "It means I'm willing to try to rebuild our relationship, slowly." "What would that look like?" "It would look like you continuing to pay restitution, staying away from Kara completely, and proving over time that you understand what you did wrong. And then maybe eventually we can be father and son again." Jake nodded, tears in his eyes. "I'd like that. So would I." After Jake left, I sat in my study and opened the war journal for the last time. On the final page, I wrote, "Kara, convicted felon, 6 months in jail, 3 years probation, $50,000 in restitution and legal fees, reputation destroyed, marriage over, living with her mother in a trailer park 40 miles away. Jake, fired, humiliated, but taking responsibility, paying restitution, relationship salvageable with time and effort. Me, business intact, house secure, dignity preserved, justice served, lessons learned, trust your instincts, document everything, don't let emotions drive decisions. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people face the consequences of their own choices." I closed the journal and locked it in my safe. The war was over, and I'd won, not through violence or illegal schemes, but through patience, planning, and an absolute refusal to let anyone destroy what I'd spent my life building. 6 months later, Kara was released from jail and moved to another state. Jake finished paying the restitution and started dating a woman his own age, someone who'd never been married to his father. The town moved on to new gossip, but people still nodded respectfully when they saw me at Murphy's bar or the hardware store. I'd become something of a local legend, the man who'd handled betrayal with class and calculation instead of violence and vengeance. My landscaping business was more successful than ever. Turns out that people like doing business with someone who's proven he can handle a crisis without falling apart. And every morning when I looked in the mirror, I saw a man who'd faced the worst thing that could happen to a marriage and come out stronger on the other side. Green lawns, black hearts. I'd pruned the rot and watched it wither. No apologies, no forgiveness for those who didn't earn it. Just my life. Finally, completely mine.